I've been seeing comments of individuals stating that they applied for the Navy Federal Flagship and they got approved for $25,000. And so I'm just like, that is great. That's amazing. But on the same hand, I see individuals commenting stating that when they applied for the Navy Federal Flagship, they barely got like 8,000, and then when I applied, I barely got 7,000. But let me know in the comments, when you apply for any of the Navy Federal credit cards, did you get approved for a high limit? I did a poll on my community tab asking, when you apply for your first Navy Federal credit card, how much were you approved for? So at the time of me recording this video, majority of individuals got approved from 5,000 to 10,000, but there were a few that did get approved for 25,000, which is great. So in this video, I want to talk about possibly why you're not getting approved for high limits and how we can change that. Let's get into it. So when I had applied for my first Navy Federal credit card, the Navy Federal Flagship, I had only been a member with Navy Federal probably a few weeks. And I had a checking account and a savings account, but I was not depositing any money in those accounts. And then I had a nerve to apply for the Navy Federal Flagship, thinking that I was going to get approved for over like 20,000 because at the time I had a high credit score, over 700, and I had low utilization. So I'm just like, it's no way that I'm not going to get approved for a high limit. Plus the other credit cards that I had, I want to say my highest limit was probably 15,000. So I was ranging between 13 and 15,000 with the credit cards that I had. So when I got approved for the Navy Federal Flagship for like 6,700, that was going to be my lowest credit limit. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that is crazy that I had only got approved for that amount. So when I think back to when I had applied, I'm just like, I should have used a different strategy. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Now, the first thing that you should consider when you are wanting to apply for one of the Navy Federal credit cards is, one, do you just want to get approved for a Navy Federal credit card, or do you want a high limit? Because you're going to use two different strategies depending upon which path you want to take. So like for myself, even though, yes, I did get approved, and that's good and all, but really I wanted to be approved for 20 to 25,000. So I would say the first thing to do is, if you only want to get approved, then you should consider just go ahead and going over to the Navy Federal website and doing a pre-qualification to see which of the 5 credit cards you're pre-qualified for. That way you're not wasting an inquiry and you'll see what your options are and then go from there. Next, if you are wanting to apply but get approved for a high limit, here is the strategy you should use. Now, this possibly could be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say not apply for any credit cards, maybe for 3 to 6 months, at least 3 months. I would say just 3 months. So for myself, when I had joined Navy Federal, I had a Navy Federal checking account and a savings account, and it wasn't even like 3 weeks before I had applied for the Navy Federal Flagship, the premier credit card. I was not depositing any money or anything. So it's like, what kind of relationship did I really have with Navy Federal at that moment? So during this waiting period, what I would suggest is depositing money or doing direct deposit in your accounts during this time. Consider pulling your credit report and your credit score to see where you're starting. Do you have any late payments? What is your credit utilization? And how many inquiries do you have on your credit report and around, what's the time frame that you had applied for those credit cards? Now, when I had applied for the Navy Federal Flagship, I had already applied for like 2 other credit cards within a 3-month span. So, some credit card companies see that as a negative when you are applying for other credit. And so I probably should have waited before I had applied for the Navy Federal Flagship, because I had just applied for I had applied for the Chase Marriott Bonvoy, and then I had applied for the Chase IHG credit cards. So I had got those credit cards probably within the 3 months. And I want to say the Chase IHG, that wasn't even within a 2-week period. So that was too close. Also, by us pulling our credit report, we'll be able to see what is our credit utilization looking like. Now, I would say this is going to be the case for any credit cards that you're going to be applying for. If you have high utilization that doesn't really look good because it just looks like you're not being a good steward of your credit, if you have high utilization, so I would say 50% or more, especially maxed out, that's not going to look good. So during this waiting period, consider lowering your credit utilization, because this is going to be twofold. Not only are you lowering your credit utilization, but you're also going to increase your credit score, because if you want to increase your credit score fast, if you tackle your credit utilization, this is going to be really good. So I would say if you can get your credit utilization 30% or lower, but I would say the lower the better. So probably 7% or lower, because when you go onto the Experience site, it states if we want to be high achievers, we really want to have utilization 7% or lower. And so I think that that is a good baseline to start. Next, I would consider getting a Navy Federal pledge loan or using other Navy Federal products. But I would say that this is optional, because I really feel like with Navy Federal, it's a relationship credit union. So if you're depositing money into your accounts using the other products, they're going to be able to see, are your accounts in good standings and what is your relationship like? So with the Navy Federal pledge loan, I would consider getting a higher loan and a longer term. So in this case, not necessarily getting a $250 pledge loan, but possibly consider getting maybe like $3,000 and maybe like 2 years or 3-year loan. This way, it's going to help with your length of credit and your credit mix and your payment history. So that's good. And so that's why I'm stating that it's also good to pull your credit report so you can see what areas of your credit report do you need to work on. So do you need a more of a mix of credit, and do you need to report some payment history on your credit report also? Now with the pledge loan, most people will pay off the loan 90%. And so that's why I'm saying to get a higher limit, because let's say if you get $3,000, then you can, even though you're taking the money out of your savings account, you're going to basically be putting 90% of that back into your account and then just pay over time. So it is reporting good history on your credit report. If you don't want to get the Navy Federal pledge loan, consider other products with Navy Federal. Say for instance, by the time I had applied for the Navy Federal More Rewards and I had got approved for $25,000, I had the Navy Federal flagship, I had an auto loan, I had been direct depositing money into my checking account, and I was depositing money into my savings account. So I was building more of a relationship. So I feel like it was about a 7-month span. And during that time, I feel like my Navy Federal internal score increased. So consider some of the other products so that it can show your good standings, your payment histories, can also help to increase your credit score. Those are some things that could increase our probability of getting approved for the higher limits. So say for instance, the comment that stated they had a similar experience to me, they stated they had a credit score between a 7 and an 800. They had low utilization. I believe they had paid off a loan. And when they had applied for, I want to say the Chase Sapphire Reserve, they had got approved for $30,000, but then when they applied for the Navy Federal flagship, they had only got approved for not even $8,000. So that's why I really feel like by creating that relationship with Navy Federal, that's how you can get higher limits. So that's why I'm stating it's a strategy to not necessarily just go ahead and apply as soon as you join Navy Federal. Create that relationship first, at least 3 months or so. If you can wait a little bit longer, possibly that can increase your odds. But I would say at least 3 months. If I had to do it all over again, I would have waited at least 3 months before I had applied for my first credit card, if getting a higher limit was my goal. And that was my goal, to get a higher limit. If that's not your goal, to get a high limit, then just do the pre-qualification to see which credit cards you qualify for and then apply. It really depends on what your goal is. So let me know in the comments, when you apply for your first Navy Federal credit card, how much you were approved for, and do you have any tips or tricks on how you think we could get higher limits on the Navy Federal credit cards? Well, check out this video where I was talking about how inquiries can impact our credit score.
It's not a game, it's a